Hi, welcome back to the show. My name is Nelda. In today's episode, we're talking about the United Nations and how they've decided to move a few of the headquarters to Kenya. So a few videos ago, we talked about how Kenya has decided to become visa-free for virtually every African country except two and a few other Caribbean countries. And a lot of people asked me to record a video on my reaction with the UN moving its headquarters to Kenya. It's not all the headquarters that are moving. There's only three. It is UN Women, which is the United Nations Women. And then there is UNFPA, which is the population fund. They deal a lot with sexual and reproductive health. And then there is UNICEF as well. Everybody knows UNICEF. It is the children's fund. There is a theme going on in here: women, population, children. We're going to talk about it very shortly. Kenya already has two UN headquarters. The first one is UN Habitat, which is their human settlements program. It deals a lot with urbanization, people settlement, how people moving in cities, and all of that. And then there is UNEP, which is the environmental program, also under the UN. So this move is absolutely major because if you look at the cities that already have UN headquarters, you're looking at New York, Geneva, Vienna, The Hague in the Netherlands. You're looking at Rome, Paris, London, Tokyo, Bern. So it's all these major, big, fancy cities, both on the western part of the world as well as the eastern part of the world. So this is the very first time when a major UN move is going to be involving an African country, an African city as well, which is Nairobi in this case. There are three main reasons why this move is happening, which I think at the same time will also situate the context of all that is going on. And also I'll give my personal opinion towards the end of the video, so you better stay and watch. Now, the main reason the UN is moving a few of its headquarters to Kenya is, number one, they're trying to cut down on costs. So when you compare cities like New York, operationally speaking, New York is very expensive to live in compared to cities like Nairobi. I have a little breakdown here. When you look at office space, for example, commercial office space in New York, you're looking at $6 to $10 per square foot per month, while in Nairobi you're looking at around $1 to $2 per square foot per month. So at the end of the month in New York, you're looking at $60,000 to $100,000 a month just for the office space, compared to Nairobi where you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 a month. So that is absolutely staggering. So of course, when the United Nations is looking at its budget, which by the way is very, very intense, I have a note here that they had, I think it was in 2025, their planned budget is roughly $3.6 billion. That's their core budget. And then their budget for peacekeeping activities is around $5.4 billion. So at the end of the day, it makes more sense when they're like, okay, we're trying to cut down on costs. Where should we move? Of course, Africa is going to pop up in the conversation. And they're like, you know what, Nairobi would be a good option. We're going to talk about that a little bit later as well, whether I think Nairobi was the best option, because again, there are many other reasons the UN is moving. They're trying to improve their efficiency. And one key thing that I think is very important is they're also decentralizing their operations to spread them out a little bit. Like I said, a lot of their other headquarters are mostly in America, in New York, like the Secretariat, all of that, General Assembly, all these major bodies. When you look at Geneva as well, which is in Europe, when you look at Vienna, when you look at the Netherlands with The Hague, all these cities are in Europe, and then Tokyo in Asia. So Africa wasn't really getting represented in a sense, and I think this was, generally speaking, so far a good move. We're going to get into the downsides and the potential negatives of this move later on in the video as well, because we want to present a balanced view. Now, overall, I think this will it will bring Africa into the picture a little bit more, which I don't think is a bad thing, guys. If you guys think it's a negative thing, tell me, but I think this will enhance Africa's role in global policy, while also, yes, cutting down costs, while also, yes, improving efficiency, hopefully. And I think one of the reasons I'm impressed by this is part of a bigger goal, which is part of UN at 80. The United Nations is turning 80 in October this year. And the way it was created initially is that there was something called the League of Nations, which was created after World War I. So Europeans are fighting. Because it was obviously them. They were fighting sometime in early 1900s. And then they decided after they stopped fighting, they were like, you know what, guys, we're going to come up with a way to keep each other accountable. We're not going to fight anymore. That was the League of Nations. And then the League of Nations failed because they started fighting again. And this was in 1939 to 1945. So World War II happened. And then after World War II, then the United Nations Charter was signed, ratified, yada, yada, yada. Basically, the United Nations was the, not precursor, because that is the thing that is before, like procursor. English is my second language, I can get away with that, but it came after the League of Nations to prevent world wars, which I I don't know if it has succeeded or not. We're not gonna talk about that in this video. But they've generally been working in promoting peace, insecurity, international cooperation. I think they've done fairly a good job, and they have a lot of bodies. Like I said, they have the 6 main organs: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, the Trusteeship Council, and then they have a few other organs or organizations that you've heard of, like UNICEF, which is of course moving to Kenya, UNESCO, WHO. All these fancy schmancy organizations that you hear of are all mostly part of the United Nations. Now, the official UN headquarters are of course in New York, and one of the main reasons is when the United Nations was being formed early on, 1945, what happened was they needed donations. They needed people to donate to start building this massive organization. They picked the United States as a neutral zone per se, because were they or were they not involved in World War II? We're not going to talk about that today. But they picked New York as sort of like a neutral zone. And in New York, there was a massive family called the Rockefeller family. If you don't know who John D. Rockefeller is, he was a rich man. People say he's one of the richest men in modern history. His family donated a lot of money to start the UN as we know it today. So a lot of donors who were there, other than the Rockefeller family, were in New York. And so a lot of headquarters are still there. That being said, in the 1960s, the United Nations started moving from New York and started opening all these global offices, but Africa was naturally left behind. They came up with all these regional offices because there was a lot of movement to do with independence in the global south. So African countries are getting independence, Asian countries are getting independence. So this is not something that is new per se. They started working on it in the 1960s. And I think it has become even more relevant now because Africa has one of the largest growing populations. The United Nations deals a lot with poverty reduction. They're looking at population growth. They're looking at education. They're looking at women's health, gender equality. And these are all issues that are affecting Africa the most. So I think it makes sense for them to be like, okay, we started moving and decentralizing our operations from America to other countries and cities in the world. And now it's time to let Africa play an even bigger role by having 3 of our major organizations being headquartered in Nairobi. Now, the question of whether or not Nairobi was the best option for the UN, very interesting, because the way I thought about it, I was like, okay, what other cities could it have been? Well, obviously Nairobi was one of them, so we're going to leave it aside. Could it have been Dodoma? If you can't tell, I'm Tanzanian. Dodoma is my hometown as well. It's the capital city of Tanzania. Dodoma was never going to be in the options, but Dar es Salaam could have been an option. But compared to Nairobi, Dar es Salaam is a village. Let's just say, and I'm saying this as a Tanzanian. Tanzanians, you can find me in the comment section. The other option would have been Johannesburg, to be fair, or Cape Town, but they're too far down south. So I think just logistically speaking, Kenya was like a good little spot for everybody to meet at. The other city that I was thinking about was like maybe Lagos, of course. And I thought that would have been a really good idea because of how Nigerians they're the largest in terms of population. They're very loud, very out there. You cannot miss Nigerians when it comes to any conversation to do with Africa. So I don't know why Lagos wasn't picked. My suspicion, it has something to do with the kidnappings that are going on in Lagos. But that's just what I think. If you want to find me, you can find me in the comment section. Addis Ababa would have been another really good option. But Addis Ababa already has other headquarters of other political organizations. So I think they wanted to pull that attention away from Ethiopia. Also, they have a lot of issues with terrorism going on with their neighboring countries. The other option would have been like any city in Morocco, like Marrakesh, Rabat, but that is too up north. And I think a lot of the issues that the UN focuses on are affecting the global south. It is the global south, but sub-Saharan Africa in particular. So I think it was nice to pick a city in sub-Saharan Africa. It could have been Cairo, but again, Cairo is towards the north, very close to the Gulf. So I think Nairobi was a really good option. Now, can Nairobi handle the weight of the UN? Well, I think they can. Guys, I really have to vouch for our neighbors. Kenya is our neighbors. I'm going to vouch for them. Of course, there's concerns about security, which I think is my biggest issue. That a lot of... I talked about this actually in the video that I covered with Kenya moving and becoming visa-free for a majority of Africans. Security and political risks. They're neighbors on the north. Tanzania, we're very good neighbors. South Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, those people up in the north, they should get their security really, really tight towards the north, because otherwise Nairobi could become a center, not a center, but a target for terrorist attacks. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because I believe in Kenyans getting this right, and I think it will be a really, really good opportunity for us to prove ourselves. Not that we need to, but we kind of need to prove ourselves, guys. We don't have a good reputation as a continent. So security risks are real, and I definitely agree with the people who bring that up. The other thing is logistical and infrastructure challenges. is, again, I covered this in the video about the visa move. Nairobi's road networks are already overwhelmed. And when you look at things like residential places, houses, apartments, yes, Nairobi is cheaper than cities like New York and Rome and Paris, but still Nairobi is quite expensive. And the demand with all the people coming in just from their country opening itself up for visas, and at the same time the UN coming in, all those jobs that are going to be created are all positive, but can the infrastructure handle it? I don't think as of now the infrastructure can handle it, and this is something that we're hoping that, like, the 3 headquarters being moved is something that is down the pipeline the next year. I don't think they can build the infrastructure in a year, but I think over the long term, Nairobi can handle it. If there is anybody in the continent who can handle this move, it would be Kenyans. So I feel very positive about it. That's my opinion. I think they can do it. Is it a crazy move? Is there a conspiracy theory behind this? I'm not too sure. You guys let me know. But my general opinion is I think it's a good move. It will bring a lot of visibility to the continent. Kenya/Nairobi was the perfect choice in my opinion. And as a Tanzanian, I'm not salty because Dar es Salaam was never going to be the option. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think. I'm really curious. And again, don't forget to like, subscribe, to share, to comment, and you'll see me in the next video. Bye.